Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a podcast from PJTN that focuses the light of truth on vital issues in today's headlines that impact every American. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore, founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and I'm here to educate, motivate, and activate you to action. I want to arm you with the truth and the facts you'll need to fight and preserve our constitutional republic and uphold the Judeo-Christian values our nation was founded upon. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have a treat for you today. We have Pastor Mark Biltz from El Shaddai Ministries, who is joining us today in the studio. And we are going to talk about a groundbreaking book and groundbreaking prophetic events that are happening in our lifetime, in our generation. And Pastor Mark, God has used this man over the years with the blood moons, and now with the recent America solar eclipse, and as inspiration by Almighty God, as he gave Pastor Mark the revelation of the scriptures, he wrote this book, America at War 2426, and it is the sons of light versus the sons of darkness. Pastor Mark, it is such an honor to have you back. And here we are in Washington, in the Seattle area. Last time we were together, we were in Jerusalem for one of the blood moons.
Yes.
And we caught that on camera too. And so now we've got this huge solar eclipse that just happened, and we are so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for also coming and speaking at El Shaddai Ministries.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to it this coming Saturday. So we're going to talk a little bit about this battle, this America's war, which really, it's amazing because we're watching the events unfolding in Israel right now, which is just the horrific. It's been 6 months now since that horrific day, October 7th, when our Jewish brethren were slaughtered. What was it? 1,400 people slaughtered. Yes. We still have people who are being held hostage. There's still war on the ground. There's still missiles and rockets being launched every day in Israel against these Jewish communities. And it doesn't seem to want to end. You talk about this battle being a battle between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. Tell us a little bit more about what you mean about this. Is this a prophetic event that we are witnessing happening before our eyes?
It is very prophetic. And believe it or not, God has warned the world, had warned Israel before it happened that it was going to happen if they had followed the patterns. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a quick example. First off, I like to use science. I like to use math. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I like to keep things down to earth. Mm-hmm. But God had said he uses the sun and the moon for signs. That's Genesis 1:14. Well, what kind of a sign is that? It's an eclipse. And the nice thing about an eclipse, no false prophet can manipulate it. And it speaks in every language, nation, and tongue. NASA records 12,000 eclipses over a period of 5,000 years, be they solar, 12,000 solar, 12,000 lunar. Not every eclipse matters. The vast majority is just math. It just happens. The way we know when God is trying to communicate is when they fall on the biblical calendar specific days. Then we know God is trying to communicate. For Israel, in Israel, they've always said that the sun, a solar eclipse, represents judgment coming on a nation. Mm-hmm. A lunar eclipse represents judgment coming on Israel. Back in 2008, I noticed there were these 4 total lunar eclipses that were coming in 2014 and 2015. And I'm so glad you and Stan could come with us on that trip. It was a very prophetic trip. But a lot of people were wondering what they meant. And a lot of people wrote all kinds of books about my material and were saying all kinds of things I never said. But here's what's mind-blowing. This is what I'm trying to say. According to NASA, you only have 1 total lunar eclipse over a 5,000-year time span every year and a half.
Right.
I saw 4 in a year and a half. Wow. So I knew there was an anomaly. And then when I put it on the biblical calendar, I saw they happened at Passover and Tabernacles. Mm-hmm. Passover and Tabernacles, 2 years in a row. So I knew it meant war. I knew it meant Israel, but I didn't know when. I finally figured it out just 6 months ago when the October 7th war happened. What it was, I looked at the last time it had happened, and it was at the 1967 war. Well, God is definitely telling us there's 4 blood moons around the 1967 war. It means war. But then all of a sudden I realized those were warning of 1973 Yom Kippur War.
Oh my gosh.
In Leviticus 25, you can only proclaim the year of Jubilee on Yom Kippur. Well, guess what? 1973 Yom Kippur was the first day of a Jubilee cycle.
Oh my gosh.
So the Yom Kippur War literally was the first day of the Jubilee. They proclaimed Jubilee, and that's when the war happens.
So this is amazing because, you know, we know in the Word, if God repeats himself, if he says something one time, we should take notice and we should listen. But when he repeats himself, he's wanting us to listen. There's a clue here. But you're saying with these 2 prophetic events, these 2 lunar eclipses back to back, this is like God saying, hello, I'm not going to just tell you one time, I'm going to reinforce it a second time.
Well, then the 4 blood moons in 2014, 2015 was 7 years before the October 7th war, which was the very last day of the year of Jubilee.
Oh my gosh.
It's 50 years, 73 to 23.
Wow.
The whole Jubilee cycle, 50-year cycle, was bookended with a war in Israel.
Wow.
Iron swords, Yom Kippur. So it's exactly God's fingerprints all over those 4 blood moons and war with Israel.
So to answer, tell me this, because, we've been listening to the prophets for many years. We have the prophets and what they wrote in the scriptures. But modern day prophets, we haven't heard this narrative. And so as God is revealing this truth to you, did you ask yourself the question, well, where are the prophets? Why aren't they speaking about this issue? And you talk about the Hebrew calendar, that we, the church, is on the wrong calendar. Explain what you mean.
I'd be glad to. When God created the sun and the moon, he said, let them, both of them, be used for his calendar. Our Gregorian calendar is based only on the sun. Very mathematical, but it's not the one God uses. I ask people, how would you like me to start celebrating your birthday on the Muslim calendar? Hello? What? Exactly. Well, the lunar calendar is what the Muslims use. Perfectly mathematical, but not what God uses. God wants to use the sun and the moon, and that's the biblical calendar. And it makes such a difference because, for example, this year, Easter or the resurrection was celebrated a month before he even dies. So we're on the wrong calendar.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
And people ask me, because we celebrate the Passover and we have Passover Seders. You're going to have a big one here in the area, in Seattle area, later this month. People just don't understand that if we don't use the Hebrew calendar, then we're going to miss the signs, which therefore makes the prophets who are speaking today, it's going to cause them to be off in their prophecy.
Exactly.
Because they're not using the Hebrew calendar.
Absolutely right. The prophets that are not using the biblical calendar are false prophets.
Right.
Or misunderstanding prophets. I don't want to get to the heart and say they're evil or anything, but they don't know what they're talking about. Right. You have to be on God's calendar. And then when you see the solar eclipse that happened, a lot of people think something's going to happen that very day.
Right.
No, now many false prophets say that, but I've never said that. The series, their solar and lunar eclipses coming over the next 2 years that fall on phenomenal biblical holidays that you don't even know of if you're not on the right calendar. This last solar eclipse that just happened, it went from south to north, over the United States. The one 7 years earlier just crossed the United States. Rarely do solar eclipses intersect. One might be in Florida, one might in California. Rarely do they completely cross the U.S. That's only happened 8 times since we've been a nation. And it's happened in the late 1700s in the Revolutionary War. in the late 1800s during the Civil War,
Wow.
in the 1900s during the Vietnam War. The solar eclipses always refer to war and judgment.
Wow.
Here we had two, 7
Right.
years apart, and just like the blood moons proved wars in Israel, there's war coming to the United States, and I believe it is coming this year.
So explain what that means. Why this year of all years? Why not, next year? What is the significance of this year, a
Sure.
possible war breaking out? I mean, we're watching war breaking out in Israel. I mean, they're calling for forcing Israel into a ceasefire, but that's not happening, at least as I checked the news this morning.
Right.
But explain.
Well, in my book, I have 2024 through 2026. I think this war may start, but it's going to go for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I believe there will be not only internal civil wars
Right.
raging, there will also be an external war.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is you see the political chasm between the right and the left,
Yes.
and how violent, this coming election, if it's even held. Who knows? They may have another virus, or they,
Right.
But not only will we see chaos between the political right and left, we're going to see it between pro-Palestinians
Yes.
and pro-Israel. We already
Yes.
saw it on campuses.
Oh, and look at what we just saw the other day. There were chants that there was a bunch
Yes.
of Islamists who were in Dearborn, Michigan.
Yes.
And they were riling up the troops, and people were shouting, "Death to America, death
Exactly.
to Israel." This is in the United States of America. Why aren't they arresting these people? This is treason.
Yeah.
They're threatening. There's terrorists, and they're encouraging their followers to take out the U.S. system. That's frightening, ladies and gentlemen. So you're saying that this is part of the warning that
This is
God
the
is
boiling
trying to
point.
get our attention. And he's doing it several times. He's not just doing it one
Right.
time.
Right.
I'm going to send you a message twice.
Right. Exactly. But not only that, I see a war erupting between a lot of the illegal immigrants and those who are anti-immigrant, because they're taking away city funds, or
Yes.
they're getting all of this money that the citizens aren't getting, or just terrorism. But as you very well know, the horrible situation with our illegal borders
Right.
crossing, there's been thousands of single Chinese men who are military aides that have come in. And I just read a report today that the government is afraid they're going to take down our electrical grid.
Right.
And so we don't need a Trojan horse to come in. We're inviting them
We've already
in. We're
brought them
paying
in.
them to come in. Giving them health care, everything else. So we need to realize that I really believe, and this may be scary, but I'm not trying to be scary.
Right.
I want to be not so, and I jokingly say we're a nonprofit ministry, but
Yep.
I want to be seen more as the weatherman. I see a Hurricane 5 category
Coming.
hurricane coming.
Yeah.
And so I want people to prepare.
That's right.
And it's going to be coming by the end of this year, because we are so weak militarily, which the government has said, we're at our weakest point ever, that the best time to attack would be when we have too many things going on.
Right.
We already have the war in Ukraine. We can barely afford economically to support that.
Right.
But you add, during the elections, the chaos, that's when China attacks Taiwan. That's when North Korea attacks South Korea. That's when Iran, Hezbollah, attacks Israel. America can't do anything. We'll have no one in charge, during the election, if it's even held. So this is the time for them to attack. But the worst thing that I see that we've allowed, and sometimes I wonder if we did it stupidly because our politicians are that ignorant, or if it was done intentionally to take America down. That's what I'm trying to decide. But I believe we will see suicide bombers in the United States, just like in Israel. We'll have people blowing themselves up on bridges,
Right.
at gas stations,
Right.
in the grocery store aisle. What would that do? Everyone is afraid to go to the grocery store because they don't know. It only have to happen once in some state,
Right.
but everyone will be afraid.
One of the things you talk about, this growing divide within these groups, the immigrants that are coming in, the political divide. But one of the other areas that I'm seeing a division happening right now that I'm following very closely is the divide in the church with regards to Israel.
Yes, huge.
These pastors and leaders are becoming more emboldened. Tucker Carlson even took on this issue, invited a priest from Christ at the Checkpoint. Now, we know Christ at the Checkpoint is a fraud group.
Yes.
They're not made up of real pastors.
Right.
They are spewing a message that is unbiblical. It's not based, there's no basis in truth. So we're seeing, even within the church, this division happening.
That's prophetic.
Over Israel.
It's in the book of Ruth. The whole situation is in the book of Ruth. If you remember, Ruth and Orpah were two Gentiles grafted into Israel. So Ruth and Orpah represent the church who's grafted into Israel.
Right.
Ruth in Hebrew means friend. She befriends the Jew, goes to Israel, works the harvest, and end up bringing King David, through whom the Messiah comes. What most Christians don't know, Orpah, who gave Israel a faint kiss on the cheek, it says she went back to her pagan gods.
Oh, wow.
And from her came Goliath.
Uh-oh.
From her came Goliath. So the church is going to be divided between the Goliath church and the David church. That's the final battle in the end times, is going to be the big division within the church. Who support Israel? Who wants to wipe out Israel? That's within the church.
It's troubling. Yeah, I'm in the process of getting ready to deal with that issue. We just released an article on Israel 365 about this
Oh,
growing problem. So what about the issue of Amalek? Because Amalek obviously is rearing his ugly head. We all know the story of Amalek and how Amalek attacked Israel, and God told the Israelites, you are never to forget what Amalek did to you when you were in the desert, and they attacked the most vulnerable
That's what they did.
of those who were traveling. Talk about Amalek. What role does Amalek play, modern day Amalek, in what we're facing?
It's huge. It is huge. Everyone knows what Hamas did to the people of Israel.
Right.
How they chopped up their body parts, chopped off their heads, cut open the ladies. The very name Amalek in Hebrew means a nation who chops up people.
Oh my gosh.
That's what Amalek means. It's in my book.
gosh.
They are a nation who chops off body parts. And the whole reason they chopped off body parts, we're finding out in the news, was to hold the Israeli families hostage by making them pay for part of the body of their loved one so they can have it to bury.
That is so evil.
That is
Oh
what
my
this
gosh.
is. And Hamas is the Hebrew word for violence. Well, God said he destroyed the world during Noah's time because of violence. Here we see the introduction of Hamas, Iran, Lebanon, Hezbollah, ISIS. These are the axis of evil. Okay, these are Amalek. Well, I heard one is two different Israeli soldiers, leaders. One of them said, this is the last generation that's going to be fighting, okay, basically against Amalek. Another leader said, there's no Amalek. What are you talking about?
Right.
God said in Exodus, I believe it's like 17:16, he is going to go to war with Amalek in every generation.
That's right.
So Hitler was the Amalek in the 1900s.
Right.
The Amalek in the 2000s is Iran and its tentacles
And
that
what
go
are we
around.
doing, ladies and gentlemen? Our taxes are helping to fund Israel's enemy, our enemy.
Not only that, we left like $17 billion of ammunition for ISIS, but we won't allow Israel settlers to even have rifles.
Oh my
Yeah, the whole thing is just absolutely insane. But we need to realize that we are at a defining moment in history right now. And if we push a two-state solution, the wrath of God will come down like never before. Because it says in Joel, chapter 3, he's going to plead with every nation about dividing the land of Israel. Zechariah 1 is the story of the red horse of Revelation writing.
Right.
And God said he is going to judge these four horns. And Zechariah says, what are these four horns on the altar? And he said, these four horns are the ones who are trying to divide the land of Israel. Those four horns are the quartet. The UN, the EU, the US, and Russia, who in 2001 began with the sole purpose of dividing the land of Israel.
Oh my God.
And then comes these four carpenters who cut the horns off the altar. And Zechariah says, who are these? And God says, basically, they are my four messengers that are now going to send terror into these four entities that are trying to divide the land of Israel. And this is why I see why terrorism is going to be coming to the United States as the leading entity with the UN of dividing the nation of Israel.
Oh my gosh. That is, ladies and gentlemen, this is so critically important for us to understand. And I'm so grateful that Pastor Mark is here to break this down for us. Because, you know, in Joel chapter 3, verse 9, that's where the name of our organization exists. I've always known, Pastor Mark, that PJTM was started in order to prepare the people for war. Proclaim this among the nations, or proclaim this to the nations, prepare for war. We are, since 2005, when we actually officially became incorporated or became a nonprofit, we've been preparing our people for war, Christians,
Yes.
to rise up, to stand with Israel, to stand with the Jewish people, because we knew this day was going to come. In fact, one of our first films was The Forgotten People on the
Yes.
Holocaust, because we asked the question, how in the world could the church, Christians in Germany, an educated Christian nation, stand by and allow Jews, 6 million Jews, to be slaughtered, and another 5.5 million other people as well?
Yeah.
Where was the church?
Right.
Why is the church silent today? I mean, I can't tell you, Pastor Mark, you're a rarity. You are an anomaly in this whole world of Christianity, because most pastors won't even enter into this area. I've had pastors tell me, well, that's great that God's called you to defend Israel, but he didn't call me to that. And I'm like, then what flock are you shepherding? Because there's only
Right.
one flock that I know of.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyhow, so, you know, maybe there's a pastor who is watching this program and they're listening intently because they're starting to see the signs. They're listening to what you're saying. Okay, this is making sense. What am I missing? What would you say to the pastors who are listening to this program right now?
The most important thing is to get on God's calendar. And the reason I say that is because we know from Ecclesiastes 3, everything is cyclical. There's a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck. The problem is not being on God's calendar. The church is planting at plucking time and plucking at planting time.
Oh my gosh.
They don't know what time it is. We want to be like the sons of Issachar who knew what Israel ought to do. We have to understand the times and seasons. A lot of people at church, well, we post all the times and seasons. And I'll say, well, what time is it? Oh, I don't know. What season is it? Oh, I don't know. Every month is a season. The month of Iyar, the second month on the calendar, Nisan, is a month of war.
Right.
Okay? Why do I say that? The 67 war was in Iyar. The 48 war was in Iyar. Amalek attacked in Iyar. All the murmuring and complaining happened in Iyar, and the God's plagues came. So we need to know what time it is, what cycle we're in, and you are exactly right. We are entering a war cycle. Now, Israel wasn't aware they were in a war cycle.
Right.
So they're singing Kumbaya and all this peace, love now,
Right.
and they got murdered.
Right.
So my biggest thing is to get the church on God's calendar so they know what and when things are going to happen. You talk about in the days of Noah. You talk about in the days of Lot.
Right.
Well, guess what? Noah knew when the flood was coming. Abraham knew when Lot and needed to get out of there and destruction was coming. There are people who understands literally the times and the seasons so we can tell the church what to do. But this is where I love traveling and speaking, telling people to get them to grasp the importance of God's calendar. And the solar lunar eclipses are like flashing train signals. A train is coming.
Right.
So many of these false prophets go out there and say something's going to happen on the day of the eclipse. Absurd. Absolutely not. They're the flashing signals warning that the train is coming.
Right. So here's it. This lunar or this solar eclipse happened on the 1st of Nisan.
Exactly.
So what is significant about that?
The 1st of Nisan is where the first commandment was ever given.
Oh, wow.
And what was it? It was Moses, this is to be the beginning of months for you. The first commandment was get on God's calendar.
Right.
And that was given in Egypt. Then a year later, it was on Nisan 1 that the glory fell, on Moses' tabernacle. It was the first day, the grand opening ceremony of Moses' tabernacle. Not only was it when the glory fell, but some of God's people were killed.
Right.
Nadab and Abihu,
That's
Aaron's sons,
right.
the priests were killed on Nisan 1. Nisan 1, when the solar eclipse happened, also was the very day of the beginning of the 3 days of darkness in the original plagues in Exodus.
Wow.
So it's huge.
So what is the significance then? Because if the solar eclipse was a sign and a warning to the nation
of the United States in particular.
X marks the spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? What is the significance of us going into a Passover season? Is Passover, how does this all connect with the fact that Passover's coming in a couple, less than 2 weeks?
Well, if you go to Daniel chapter 10, he's been praying for fasting and praying for 3 whole weeks.
Right.
And there was a messenger on the 24th day of Nisan that came to him and said, I wanted to come to you from the very beginning, but I was in a big battle with the Prince of Persia. That's Iran. Okay?
Oh my gosh.
Now you have to remember there are heavenly battles.
Right.
And on earth is the echo. It's a pattern. When wars are going on in heaven, wars are going on earth.
Right.
Okay. And when he comes to Daniel, he says, I'm going to give you a vision of what's going to happen to your people at the end of time.
Oh my gosh.
So that vision is of what's going to happen during our day.
Oh my gosh.
And what happens? He says, I wouldn't have been able to come, but Michael, the archangel, who is the prince over your place, is fighting the Prince of Persia, and he came to help me so I could come and give you the message of what's going to happen to your people in the end times. Guess when that happened? It was in the month of Nisan.
Oh,
so that means it's going to be in the month of Nisan when the final battle against Amalek takes place against Israel.
Oh my gosh.
So it could happen anytime in the next 3 weeks. Iran could attack Israel, and we will know from Daniel's vision that this is being fulfilled because it's happening at this time in Nisan.
And the U.S. government and the Israeli government is betraying Israel and is also saying that an attack from Iran against Israel is imminent. It could happen
That's what they're
day.
saying. Now, if it doesn't happen in Nisan, then I say that it's going to happen next year, but it'll happen in Nisan.
Right.
When you know the patterns and the seasons, you know when the attack, you don't know the exact date, you don't know the exact year, but you can see the pattern.
You know the season.
You know the
because
seasons.
We're paying attention.
Exactly. And what's mind-blowing is there's a set of solar and lunar eclipses happening over the next 2 years. And I'm sorry to say, United States, it's not about you. Okay, there are solar lunar eclipses that going on all over the world, and I believe every nation is going to be covered by one of them. But this is going to be what's mind-blowing for Israelis. Nisan 1 was the beginning of the religious calendar. Tishri 1, or Rosh Hashanah, or Yom Teruah, or the Feast of Trumpets, is the first day of the civil calendar. This is when Adam was created on Tishri 1. 4 solar eclipses are happening in the world in a row on Nisan 1, Tishri 1. Nisan 1, Tishri 1. So this is unbelievable that these are solar eclipses referring to judgments on the nations. Okay, and they happen exactly at the beginning of both calendars. But then there are also 4 blood moons that are happening in a row on Purim. That's the whole story of Amalek and Esther.
Gosh.
2 years in a row, we are going to have lunar eclipses on Purim.
Oh my gosh.
Which is all about Amalek. This is the war with Iran. That's why I'm saying we're going to see this war. The other 2 years in a row lunar eclipses happen on Elul 15. That is 2 weeks before Rosh Hashanah. That is the month of repentance. So God gives a 2-year warning, repent for Israel. And he also says Amalek is coming to attack. Amalek is coming to attack.
And you know that prophecy that you said to stand with Israel is right there in the book of Obadiah. That's one of my favorite books. All of our followers know that Obadiah is repeated over and over because we're trying. Our next film is on the Inquisition. It's to try to gather the exiles, to blow the whistle to the Hispanic, Latino, Latina community that your descendants may very well be descendants of the Jews who were forced, the conversos, who were forced to convert to Catholicism. And this whole group of people have to come back. But in the book of Obadiah, God told the prophet, in the last days, the times we're living,
Right.
God's going to wipe out the descendants of Edom because they stood by while their brother
Yes.
Jacob was held in captivity and they did nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are standing by again. We are allowing our government to implement policies that fly in the face of Almighty God himself and with a whimper. Now, yes, there are organizations like PJTN and others who are trying to sound the alarm, to wake up the church, like what Pastor Mark is doing. Prepare. And God is trying to do, because he's repeating, he's giving us the signs, and he's repeating himself over and over. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this is why your support of our Jewish brethren is so critically important right now. You should be on God's calendar. You need to be studying. And Pastor Mark, you've got videos that people can watch on YouTube. They can go to your website. Talk a little bit more about how people can find this book. We're going to have this book available to you also, pjtn.org. But Pastor Mark, tell our audience where they can find out more about you, about El Shaddai Ministries, and how they can get involved.
Yes. We have our website. We make it short, just initials, esm.us.
For El Shaddai Ministries. El Shaddai Ministries.
esm.us. There they can get the book. We have it on sale right now, but it is very detailed. It lists every Shemitah year to creation, every Jubilee year till creation. It talks about the Psalm 83 war, which involves Amalek. It hasn't come to pass yet, but there's Amalek appearing in the Psalm 83 war. So I believe that Psalm 83 and the Isaiah 17 war, where Damascus is obliterated, are the two prophetic wars that are going to come. It's not going to be the Gog-Magog war. It's going to be Psalm 83, Isaiah 17. I go into it in the book. But to me, I want people to get on God's calendar. So come to esm.us, get the book America at War 2024 through 2026, and support your Jewish brethren. That's what is so important. And that's why I so am grateful to you and proclaiming justice to the nations, because you've been doing this battle now for a long time.
Yeah, we've been at it since 2002, when 6 months after 9/11, when I saw Amalek hit the shores of Israel, and then of course we hit us. We just, as Christians, we're never connecting the dots about Israel. And when we saw the attack on 9/11, we were all Israelis that day. Remember, it was either George W. Bush or it was Bibi who said, we are all Israelis now. They recognized, just like, and Israel has a monument with all the names of the people who died on 9/11 in their country as a memorial to America and to those lives that we lost that day. So we are in the middle of a war. We are living in the last days, ladies and gentlemen. And for pastors, I also want, because this is an important message for pastors, how do you help pastors? I mean, are they starting to contact you and ask you, help me understand this, teach me? Because I think you're going to become a shepherd of shepherds too in these last days as they start to wake up.
Well, I love to shepherd pastors, especially, and help them. But like any big ship, you have to turn it slowly. And so for me, I understand all of the complications of this. But I am here to give people, all the pastors, all the tools they need. I travel all over and speak. I was in like 13 nations speaking before COVID in just a year and a half. But I also travel all over the United States. But my goal is just to help pastors, because they have a big flock. The ones that love their flock, those are the ones I want to help,
Absolutely. Very good.
I just want people to see the greatest thing about this book. It's a hardback. It's big and large print for the people that are old.
That are reading it.
Yes. But I also love that it's all in color. We've got color charts and everything in there as well.
It's absolutely beautiful, ladies and gentlemen. I want to encourage you again, go to esm.us. You can order a copy. They are on sale right now. But what is the significance about Hanukkah? Why is Hanukkah significant in this end time event?
It's so significant when you understand the times and the seasons. The one thing, most of the church has a Greek philosophy, and they see events as a checklist. This happened, won't happen again. This happened, won't happen again. It's just the opposite. If it's happened before, it will happen again, but it'll be on a different level. Kind of like you see your house at the ground level, you see your house from a plane. You can see your house from a satellite. Things. Ecclesiastes says there's nothing new under the sun. Right. Everything that has happened will happen again. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows Matthew 24, prophecy. Matthew 24 is all about Hanukkah happening again. And if you don't understand Hanukkah, you don't understand Matthew 24. That's why it's so important to understand. One of the things, what's the difference between Haman in the book of Esther and Antiochus Epiphanes in the story of Hanukkah? Haman wanted to kill all the Jews. Right. Annihilation. Mm-hmm. Antiochus, it wasn't annihilation, it was assimilation. You can keep your Jesus, you can keep everything, just come and add this God to your collection. Oh my God. Now, if you don't, you will be killed. But the big difference, Hitler was the type of Haman. He wanted to kill all the Jews. What's coming before the church right now is assimilation, and they'll let you keep your Jesus, put him in your pocket, and you'll think you're going to be fine. But if you don't understand Hanukkah, Matthew 24 is Hanukkah happening again.
Oh my gosh, and that is a real concern. Of course, it's always been to the Jewish community, assimilation. Yes. Because it would be, it's like Christians who push assimilation. It's almost like being anti-Semitic. It's denying them who they are, right, who God has called them to be. They're right, called to be a light to the nations. And what are we doing? We're forcing them to put their light under a bowl, not to shine their light to the nations, right, to teach the nations of the world how to worship the one true God. Yes. Oh, Pastor Mark, we're a mess. We'll get there.
Well, I'm glad we're teamed up.
I am too. Thank you so much for joining me today. God bless you, and I wish you much success. I can't wait to see what God is going to reveal to you next. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. And again, if you are not a member of PJTN, you want to join PJTN, go to pjtn.org, sign up, get on our mailing list. We want to help connect you to your Jewish ancestry, as well as our biblical duty to stand with our Jewish brethren and the state of Israel against this rise of global anti-Semitism and Jew hatred. So we're so grateful for you, Pastor Mark. Keep up the great work. God bless you.
Bless you too.
Thank you again for joining me on this edition of Proclaiming Justice. Please share this podcast with your family and friends. For more information about how you can get involved, please visit our website at pjtn.org. As a PJTN Watchman, you can help us keep up the fight to preserve our freedom for our children and their children for such a time as this.